Are you struggling with all kinds of new stresses from COVID-19? I hear you. I'm struggling right along with you. In this video, I'm going to take you with me as I go back through my journals from early on in recovery and look for tips and tools that I can use to help me through the new challenges that I'm facing today. Hi there, I'm Erin, and welcome. If this is your first time here, you might not already know that I like to help people who are in recovery from an eating disorder to use creativity to heal. Let's get into today's topic, and that is what happens when you are going through something traumatic and new that's very different than anything you've experienced before, and you're not exactly sure how to deal with those challenges. I had a really great appointment with my therapist last week and talked to her about some of these challenges that I have been facing due to being isolated and feeling so separated from the rest of the world. And she suggested to me that I take a walk back through my old journals to see what tips and activities that I used to use that might be able to be used again to help me now. Because honestly, a lot of the things that I did in my early days of recovery aren't things that I had to continue indefinitely. So there's probably lots in here that I have forgotten that I knew worked. So I'm going to go back through them and see what I can fish out of them that will be helpful for me now. These are my first four journals. So these are the first four that I used when I started treatment. This took me through about just over the first year. I'm not going to show you all the pages because there's a lot of personal information in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through them. I'm going to flip through them and I'm going to take note of some of the activities, and I'll show you some of the artwork in here as well so you can see how my art has evolved over the last 2+ years. Well, I'm noticing right away that there is one thing that I have stopped doing, and that is one of the most simple things. I take note of gratitudes every day, and that's something that I started in recovery and I have continued, still do it. What I have stopped doing is I stopped recording my goals and accomplishments, and I think recording accomplishments and goals are really important to help you set realistic, measurable things that you can do every day, no matter how big or small, to keep you moving forward in recovery or whatever your goal might be. It might not be a recovery goal. Celebrating accomplishments is really big. It was really big, and I think I need to get back to that. It's a lot of talk about numbing there, so what did I see if I can find where the shift happened after that. Okay, so there's an entry here about 3 weeks later. No, it's not. That's not even 2 weeks later. It's okay, so there's an entry here like 5 days later. And I can see that I have made some progress. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the entries in between that one and the one 5 days later to see what activities I was doing that might have helped. Okay, now that I've reviewed a little bit more, I can see where I might want to implement some of these old strategies. So I'm going to go ahead and put a post-it note here. I also found here a page where I was reviewing my habit. The review was done just to track whether or not the activities that I was doing every day were contributing to negatively or positively to those behaviors. So I think I'm going to put a post-it on that as well. I wonder if I could show you that one. I can kind of show you that one. So I've just done some drawing at the top, some bright colors to make it more appealing to the eye. And I was practicing my hand lettering, so I wrote all of the questions on my review sheet with hand lettering and then answered the questions with a different color pen. I've said it often that you can tell when you look back in old journals, you can often tell, especially if you're doing any artwork, you can often tell what your mood was like that day just by looking at the images without actually having to read the page. And this page is a really good example of that. So I got pretty creative on this page, but you can tell by the colors, they're really dull and muted. And I used a lot of drip technique. And my first inclination would be to think that I was probably probably going through some sadness. So yeah, there's a lot of hand lettering, just playing around with different ways to hand letter. That was really my foray into art, was hand lettering. It kind of allowed me to experiment a little bit with other ways of getting creative. There's another fun page. I loved this one when I did it. I did bring back more free-form journaling in my bullet journal this month. Now that we're in April, I have a new spread started, and I've given myself twice as much space to write, so that is definitely helping. This is another fun page that I did. I used markers to blend there, to blend that flower. Used to spend a lot of time getting lost in my thoughts while I blended colors with markers. It's really therapeutic, I find. It's almost meditative, really. Oh, okay. I just found something else really interesting that I haven't tapped into for a long time. There are a ton of TED Talks on YouTube. I'm gonna put a post-it on that, and I'll go back and make a list of all the TED Talks that I might benefit from watching again. Kristen Neff and Chris Germer's websites are both also really great resources for information and activities that you can use to practice self-compassion. And that, I think, is something that's really important for all of us right now. So I was just reading a little entry there about how my eating disorder likes extremes. She really does. Another self-review page. And you can see here with this one, I was definitely getting, starting to move away from practicing these self-reviews as regularly. But they got very simple, where I would just write the question number and the answer. Very simple answers, not a lot of expansion on them. And I also, looking at the art around this time, there's a lot more bright colors in it, so I was definitely feeling a lot better by this point. I used to have a habit where I would try a new recipe on Sunday, and I've gotten away from that. So maybe it's as simple as getting back to it. It will take a little bit of planning, of course, because I'll have to make sure that I have all the ingredients on my grocery list for recipes that I'll want to be trying, 2 weeks out. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. Oh, here's an interesting quote. In order to love who you are, you cannot hate the experiences that shaped you. And I remember this. This was at about the point where I was starting to realize that the eating disorder didn't have to be a bad thing about me. I didn't have to make it about good and bad parts of me, that it was just a part of me. It is just a part of me, and it's a part of who I have become. Oh, this was fun. I was learning how to draw banners. It says, we read to know we are not alone. Still love this one. Mad Hatter. A quote from Alice in Wonderland. This is my dream. I'll decide where it goes from here. It's getting harder to tell when I was having less productive and less enjoyable days, because the colors that I was using in my artwork tended to be a little bit more vibrant. Oh, okay, this is a really interesting entry that I'm sure some of you could stand to hear right now. I wrote, "The start of the new year felt very heavy until today. I found myself unable to face what the past year turned into for me. I spent a lot of time over the past 2 weeks bouncing back and forth between pride and shame. I felt a lot of regret for time that I spent on myself because it was being framed in my mind as selfish. But today I find myself more able to see that thought pattern for what it was. Edie has been trying to shame me back into my old behaviors. I've been fighting to hold on to the practices and tools that I learned to be helpful for my mental well-being, and her voice has been loud. It's okay. Edie, please know that I know you're there. I hear you. I thank you for being there to help me cope when I didn't know any other way. I won't forget you. I never could. But if you don't mind, or even if you do, I'm going to try to do things a little differently for a while. Stay, if you'd like, but I won't be needing your opinions for this next part. I really should have that hanging up somewhere. And then a quote right after that says, when you forgive, you in no way change the past, but you sure do change the future. And that's by Bernard Meltzer. Some of the entries in here are really painful to read. Looking for an entry from a day where I wasn't feeling quite so awful. And then I'll do the same thing again. I'll go back to the entries in between the one that I found that I was feeling really down and discouraged, between that one and the first one that I find that is more uplifting. And I'll see what activities I was doing in that time. Okay, I've just found something really simple that I can start doing, and that is to try journaling at different times of the day. I have journaling in the morning with my meditation, and my tarot is something that I'm accustomed to doing, but I haven't journaled in the evening for a really long time. So I think that I'm going to put a sticky note here, and that'll be, where are they? Here they are. And that'll be one of the things that I'm going to try out. My journaling in the morning is pretty structured, so I have it's pretty routine. So there are certain things that I think about when I journal. A lot of it is centered around my tarot reading for the day. So I think what I'm going to do is come up with that list of questions that I mentioned a few minutes ago in sort of a review format to look back at the day and see what types of things I was able to focus on and had success with, and what types of things I didn't focus on at all and would like to revisit, what types of things I focused on but didn't have success with, so that I can figure out whether those are things that need more attention or whether those are things that I need to let go of. This is actually, it looks like watercolor, but it's not. That is water-based marker. So I used a marker just to color a swatch of color, and then I used a water brush to wet that pigment, and then it moves around with the water, and you can blend the colors together that way. This one, I added another layer of fun to it. It's the markers again, but I just colored them kind of in blobs and then used the water brush to blend them, but then I put salt on it, and it gave me that speckled effect. And the quote says, "You don't drown by falling in the water, you drown by staying there." Which is true. Oh, fun! I just found my very first attempt at anime. She was my first one. That's some chibis here. Those are actually chibi characters based off of my grandchildren. And in case you're wondering, I do have a picture of my granddaughter holding balloons with the most foul look on her face, and I don't know how that's possible for a kid to be cranky looking. Oh look, I did her again. There's version 2 of Scarlet. Well, that does it. I've gone through all 4 of these. There are more, but this is enough for today. It's been a bit emotional. It's been a little bit enlightening. Well, more than a little bit enlightening. I have gotten some really great stuff out of this activity. I'm really glad that my therapist suggested that I do this. And I would suggest to you, if you are a regular journaler, that when you're struggling through something new and you're not exactly sure how the best way is to deal with it, there's lots of ways that you can get help with that. And one of the ways is to turn back and look at yourself and your own experiences and how you have weathered the storms that you've already been through, and then use some of those techniques and activities to apply to the challenge that you're facing today. So I hope you stay well, and yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me. If you like these videos, then don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Take care, friend. Bye.